You're listening to a special podcast series brought to you by the American Senior Alliance, a nonpartisan, not-for-profit organization that advocates on behalf of America's greatest generation. The Alliance strives to be a trusted source of unbiased information for seniors and policymakers. This special podcast series focuses on ways we can protect seniors from abuse. Now, your host, American Senior Alliance Executive Director, Conwell Hooper.
Welcome back to our American Senior Alliance Shares Podcast. I'm Conwell Hooper, and I'm your host of today's show and the Executive Director of the American Senior Alliance. We are an advocacy organization for those 50 plus, and we're fighting every day to protect our seniors and their hard-earned dollars. We're continuing our podcast series on elderly scams. Our first podcast, we were fortunate to be joined by the Alabama Securities Commissioner, Joe Borg. Commissioner Borg shared his tips on investment scams and how to protect yourself from investment fraud. Our second podcast, we were joined by Louisiana's Attorney General, Jeff Landry, who talked about scams in Louisiana, especially the Medicare scam. He also talked about the EDIS law, the bipartisan bill that was introduced in Congress to help refund seniors who've been scammed by the coronavirus. A recent U.S. Senate Committee on Aging reported seniors losing $2.9 billion annually from financial exploitation. The frightening thing about that number is not only the magnitude of it, but the Kansas Attorney General said in that same U.S. Senate hearing that only 1 in 24 cases of elder exploitation gets reported. Today, we're going to discuss scams in Florida. We're fortunate to have a special guest joining us today, Winter Park, Florida Police Chief Michael Dill. He's going to talk about a scam that has caused many elderly citizens to lose their life savings. It's the grandparent scam. Chief Dill is a graduate of the FBI National Academy. He served in law enforcement for an amazing 39 years. He received his master's in criminal justice from the University of Central Florida. Prior to becoming the police chief in Winter Park, he served as police chief in Atlantic Beach. There's no question, Chief Dill has seen it all. Welcome, Chief Dill.
Thank you, Conwell. It's good to be here.
Chief, you're the police chief for Winter Park, Florida. Is that right?
That's correct.
We have senior citizens, Chief Dill, listening across the United States. So tell us where Winter Park is located.
So Winter Park is located in Central Florida, right next to the city of Orlando. We're neighbors with the city of Orlando.
Outstanding. What's the population of, say, the Winter Park, Orlando area?
So the Winter Park is about 30,000 residents. We are home to the Rollins College, which is a very popular private school. And we have a very beautiful city, Park Avenue, and a lot of shops and very nice homes and a chain of lakes that are very beautiful. So it's a great city to live in.
Outstanding. Yeah, it is a stunning place to live there. So you've got about 2.5 million in the greater Orlando area?
Yes, that's correct.
So if that's correct, you've got if 20% of the citizens of Florida are 65 plus, that's about 500,000 seniors that are right there in your backyard.
Absolutely.
Chief Dill, why do the fraudsters, con artists, and criminals target seniors?
It's a good question. So seniors are targeted mainly because, they're usually very trusting and polite. They have financial savings. Sometimes many of them own their own homes. They have good credit. And all these things are very attractive to scammers. Plus, as you mentioned, a lot of these frauds do not go unreported. And seniors are maybe less inclined to report frauds because they may not know how to report it. They may be too ashamed at the fact that they've been scammed. And they also may be concerned that relatives will lose confidence in their abilities to manage their own financial affairs.
You're exactly right, Chief Dill. Seniors, they feel ashamed when something like that happens to them, and so they naturally don't want to really tell anybody about it. And Many seniors across the country are living alone these days. They're isolated. All they have really is a television and, possibly a radio and their phone. So naturally, when the phone rings, because, as you mentioned, they're so trusting, they answer the telephone. And once they answer the telephone, they become potentially an easy target. Why do you think only 1 in 24 of those are being reported?
Again, I think they're afraid, they're embarrassed. It's probably the biggest reason. They want their loved ones and their relatives to believe that they're capable of taking care of themselves. So, the important thing is that, as you mentioned earlier, this happens to a lot of our seniors. It happens to a lot of our citizens, not just seniors, but our seniors seem to be the ones that are targeted more than other citizens. And so I understand why they would be embarrassed, and I would too. But it's happening to a lot of people, and it needs to be reported so that, obviously it's very difficult to solve these cases in the first place. And by reporting this, it increases our chances of solving it. But more than anything, it puts out the information to other seniors and other citizens who have not been victimized to educate them on what's going on and hopefully prevent someone else from losing their life savings.
Yes, sir. You're exactly right. Being able to share, being able to educate is crucial. And that's what we try to do at the American Senior Alliance, is kind of help tell the story and be able to have great people like you out there being able to share with other seniors. Former bank robber Willie Sutton, he's credited with a saying that said, "I rob banks because that's where the money is." Obviously, you've got right there about 4.3 million seniors, 65 plus, living in Florida. So that's obviously a key target for these bad guys. Why do you think they come after Florida seniors?
Well, again, we have a lot of seniors. We have a lot of seniors that are probably financially stable or have money, savings in the bank. They own their homes. Just seems to be an easy target for the scammers.
Yeah, I suspect that fraudster sees a big possible payday on the horizon when they go after, our older Americans. I mean, many of them, Chief, have saved their entire life to build a retirement fund. So, the scary thing about this, one phone call, it can all be sucked out of their account, sadly.
Yes.
I saw a report recently that 25% of the 65 plus population lives in Florida, Texas, and California. I suppose those are really, really hot spots for these con artists. Should seniors answer the telephone, Chief?
Well, the easy answer is to say no, but they have to answer the phone. If they don't recognize the number, on the caller ID, then, the easy answer is don't answer it. But that's easy for me to say. Again, I'm not sitting at home alone. I guess the important thing is if you answer the phone and you feel inclined to do that, just be aware that the scammers are out there. There's a lot of robocalls. There's a lot of sales calls and people trying to scam you. And just don't be afraid to hang up. You don't even have to listen to the pitch, what they have to say. Now, I don't. Sometimes I'll pick up the phone and it's not a number I recognize, and it'll be a robocall or a recording message. Please do not hang up, or it'll be a live person. They'll start talking, and in many cases, they won't even give you an opportunity to interrupt. Hang up. I hang up.
That's a great tip, Chief. That is a really good tip. And, sadly, our seniors grew up. I mean, heck, I grew up when, you had the landline and, you had the rotary dial. And so when a call came in, you definitely would answer it, because a scam or a fraud artist calling you over the telephone was unheard of. And now, I think 1 out of 2 of these calls are possible robocall or call by somebody soliciting funds. So would an answering machine make sense for a senior to allow the call to go into an answer machine and possibly allow them to call back after they've kind of done a little research?
Yeah, absolutely. Screening your calls is probably a very smart thing to do. I would highly recommend that.
Well, American Senior Alliance, as I mentioned, we're an advocacy organization for those 50 plus, and we're weighing in the legislative and regulatory arenas across the country on long-term care, healthcare, prescription drugs, transportation issues, utility issues, consumer issues. But we've seen these scams really attacked in our older population, and they're going aggressively. These con artists are aggressively going after their hard-earned dollars. And I mentioned earlier, so we think it's our responsibility to help get out the message to help protect our seniors from fraud and abuse. Chief Deal, we have several on our team who heard about you and saw an outstanding interview that you did on Fox News about the grandparent scam. So we thought it was crucial to have you on our show to talk about the grandparent scam and other scams that you would like to share with us. There's a lady that you mentioned in your community was hit by the grandparent scam. Can you tell us what the grandparent scam is?
Yes. So about a month ago in September, we responded to one of our citizens. It was an elder citizen, one of our seniors. She was home. She received a call from, it was a male, and he received a call from a female who identified herself as his granddaughter, and she had, in many cases, in these grandparent scams, the caller will sometimes they'll know the grandchild's name. They'll do their research, and either with social media or something, and they'll identify the grandchild's name. But in other cases, they'll just call the grandparent or call the senior and say, "Hey, Grandpa," or "Hi, Grandma, do you know who this is?" or "Guess who this is?" And if the grandparent or the senior responds with or thinks that it could be one of their grandkids, and they'll respond with their name, of course the caller is going to say, "You're right." And if they don't, then they'll just move on to another person to try to scam. So if they make that connection with the senior and convince them that they are in fact their grandchild, in this case the caller did, and told the victim or the citizen that she needed help very quickly, that she was involved in a vehicle crash, and she was arrested by the local police, and she needed bail money to get out of jail. So obviously that's very upsetting to a grandparent to hear that your grandchild's in trouble, and it plays on their emotions and certainly gets their attention. So in this case, the grandchild told the grandparent that they're going to have an attorney talk to them and explain how the grandfather could help. So an unknown male got on the phone and posing as an attorney and told the victim that they needed $16,000 in cash in order to get the granddaughter out of jail. And the attorney told the victim that they would send a courier to the victim's house in order to pick up the cash and bring it to the bail bondsman. So in our case, the victim left their residence and went to his bank and withdrew the money, and then called the attorney back, and approximately 30 minutes later, an unknown person, a courier, arrived at the victim's house and picked up the cash. After the victim, the senior, had given the $16,000 to the stranger, he did call his granddaughter, and this a couple hours later, just to make sure she was okay and that she was released. And it was then that he realized he was scammed.
Man, that's heartbreaking. You mentioned that these scamsters are playing on the emotions of these older Americans. Is that why you think they're having so much success with this grandparent scam?
Well, yeah, absolutely. They play on their emotions. They create a sense of urgency. Another thing they'll do typically is they'll tell the grandparent, don't call, the grandchild who's posing as the grandchild will tell the grandparent, don't call, my parents, don't, because they don't want to get in trouble. So they create this sense of urgency, and also a sense that don't tell anybody because they don't want the grandchild to get in trouble because, they've been arrested and whatnot. So it kind of forces or puts the grandparent in a sense that they need to make a quick decision, and they not to be able to call anybody else to ask them for advice.
Yeah, these con artists, they've gotten really, really skilled at running scams, whether they're on, it's seniors or any other member of our population. I have a friend who was scammed by the grandparent scam, and she said that they knew absolutely everything about her, before they called her. In fact, when the scam artist called her, the caller ID popped up showing her grandson's name. So she automatically believed it was her grandson calling. I mean, they're spoofing these calls. So when the call comes in, it shows up in the grandson or granddaughter's name. So she said that, she automatically believed that it was her son, her grandson.
They absolutely. I mean, they spoof these numbers, which makes it difficult for us to investigate or determine who they are or where they call from. And again, they do their research on social media. They can get names of relatives. They can get, if some of in this particular case that I told you about, the grandchild was a college student out of town, and they were able to find out what college they went to just by doing social media research. So one thing that's important is if you have a Facebook account or a social media account, if you can make it private to your friends and relatives, is probably a good idea. Don't make it public to where everybody can get your personal information.
That is fantastic advice, Chief Dill. Protect your information is vital, because that's how they're getting to these seniors and creating the trust on the phone call. In fact, my friend used Facebook, and she used it often, but she didn't quite have the protections on her Facebook page that she needed, the privacy protection. So this scam artist was able to get in there and see the names of her grandson. In fact, this guy called the grandmom by the nickname that the grandson would call her. And he was the only one in the whole family who called her by that nickname. So it just automatically gave that much more, believability to the call.
Absolutely. Good point.
Why do you think the grandparent scam has gotten to be so popular amongst these fraud artists?
Well, again, what we've already said, it plays on the person's emotions. It pulls at their heart. It's an easy scam for the scammers to do, and again, they can make the call, and once they get that introduction, once they've convinced the senior that they are who they are, it's easy. And if it doesn't, they just move on to the next phone call. So in many cases, it does not take a lot of preparation. They can do a lot of research, and it certainly helps, but there's ways to just convince, or just they're very good at what they do when they're communicating on the phone, to convince the grandparent that they're in trouble and they need help. And again, it pulls at the heartstrings of our seniors.
Well, you've done an amazing job over your 39 years fighting crime, and you seem so passionate for our older adults. Tell us how that started, Chief Dill.
Well, we all have grandparents, moms and dads, and as we get older, which our parents become grandparents, and so we're all impacted by this. And there's many. I have a sister who fell victim not to a grandparent scam, but to a different type of scam. It's really unfortunate. So I think, regardless of who you are, whether you're in law enforcement or in any other profession, you have family members or yourself, and sometimes fall victim to these scams. And so, and a lot of money, like you said earlier, people save their whole lives. They work their whole lives. They work hard, and they put money away, as a savings to, and for them to lose this amount of money, and it's an incredible amount of money that that people are losing. If you can't be passionate about helping our seniors, then there's something wrong.
Well, you're doing a remarkable job there in Central Florida. I saw a recent report by the Federal Trade Commission that showed there were 15,000 complaints of this grandparent scam. But if you do the numbers that we were talking about, if the Kansas Attorney General is correct that 1 in 24 are being, reported, this number, I guess you're going to have to multiply it greatly to get the true number, if that's accurate. Is there a possibility of, once a senior has been scammed, is there a possibility that they can get their money back?
Well, it's very slim. It does happen, and I got a case. Real quick, I'll tell you about it. It's not a grandparent scam. It was actually happened here in our city a few days ago. It started out as an email scam. One of our seniors received an email. There was an email receipt from Amazon for a COVID-19 toolkit. And the receipt was in the amount of $959. Now, the senior, the citizen, did not purchase this item from Amazon. And so she decided to contact the customer service number on the email. And she connected with an individual who at some point or another in the conversation told her that her computer was infected and convinced her that she had a virus, some type, on the computer, and that they would clean it up for her. And this is a very common internet scam where they'll claim you have a virus on your computer and convince you to let them gain access to your computer to remove the virus. So it happens a lot. So our seniors need to be aware of that. So this individual convinced our senior that they would clean her computer, and she enabled them by doing a few keystrokes to gain access to her computer. And then they proceeded to manipulate the victim with stories of how they could find the perpetrator overseas, that the person that put the virus on the computer were overseas, but they would need her to do some bank transfers, wire transfers from her bank. And it's just amazing. They were able to convince our senior to transfer close to $200,000 to two different banks that were in Thailand.
Wow.
She contacted her banks, and fortunately, they were able to recover two of the larger transfers. But however, and I'm not sure how they were able to do that. Either they didn't go through quick enough, or so they were able to stop that, two of them. But she still lost two other transfers in the amount of $71,000. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. Very difficult to get that back.
Well, that's so sad to hear, Chief Dill. Well, I'm thankful though the other two didn't go through, but this is kind of what I was sharing earlier. It's that, it's that one phone call or that one email. We just got to continue to tell the story to try to help protect our seniors for, about all this fraud that's moving around. Technology is obviously a blessing and a curse, but anyway, we got to stay close to our older adults to kind of help them, protect themselves. These bad guys are absolutely everywhere. Now, I did see, in that bipartisan bill that was introduced in Congress recently, the Edith's Law. That's a number of United States senators have sponsored and co-sponsored that bill, and that will allow certain seniors to get reimbursed from coronavirus scams, but I don't think that affects like a email scam or a possible grandparent scam. I don't think that would help. But anyway, I know that's working its way in Washington, and the neat thing about that, it's not going to use taxpayer money. It's part of VOCA and Victims of Crime. And anyway, so I think it comes from fees and all, but anyway, it's just heartbreaking when these seniors who are living on fixed incomes, if they get hammered by a scam, what it does to, their quality of life from that point on.
Absolutely.
Chief, I saw a couple stories recently that dealt with a UPS and a FedEx store employee. These victims a lot of times will go, they'll believe the call and they'll go straight to the bank, just like you said. They'll withdraw the funds and then they'll overnight it, to an address out of state. So I read where a couple, these employees were paying attention and recognized really what was going on. So they managed to stop the second attempt. They thwarted it because they recognized that something was up. I guess if we can build coalitions and partnerships to kind of help get the word out and maybe work with some of these UPS stores and FedEx stores to ensure that they're staying on the lookout for situations like this.
No, I think it's going to take several different partners, I guess, to help this. It's going to have to be the banks. It's going to have to be the merchants. And relatives, our family members, we just need to educate our family. And just, again, you mentioned the Federal Trade Commission, and they have on their website, and there's many other, and I'm sure you have it on yours, many other sites that talk about all the different scams out there and go into detail about, what you can expect to hear on a phone call or receive on a phone call and what to do. There's nothing better than educating yourselves on these scams. So when it does happen to you, and it probably will, you're prepared to respond or not respond, and just hang up. But
yeah, preparation and education is certainly key, and I think our families really have to play a large role here. I saw also a recent story that an Ohio woman was scammed from the grandparent scam out of $6,000. And as soon as she was scammed and took the money to either UPS or FedEx, she called the grandchild and got him on the phone and realized, hey, I've just been scammed. So she contacted either UPS or FedEx and asked them to stop the delivery, but obviously that was difficult and it didn't happen. So now she's filed suit against one of those businesses. But I think we all have to really, like you said, educate, tell our family members, get them involved to help, protect our older Americans.
Yeah, we do that with our kids. We tell parents, good parenting skills is to monitor your kids' internet activities and phone calls and whatnot, and educate them on the dangers of the internet and chat rooms. And I might be aging myself a little bit here on chat rooms, but just the virtual world. We're really, big on doing that with our kids, and but we need to educate ourselves and our parents and our grandparents as well. So, because we all fall victim to, or capable of falling victim to some of these scams.
Well, we want to continue to help tell the story and get the word out. I know the United States Attorney General Barr, he's working diligently, cracking down on elder fraud at the federal level. Our attorney generals at the state level, you got Ashley Moody right there in Florida is cracking down and kind of helping tell the story. You got the Georgia AG, Chris Carr, and I mentioned Louisiana's AG, who we had on last week, Jeff Landry, and they're all working diligently at their level. What can we do, Chief Dill, to help you as a police chief and other police chiefs across the country? What can we do to help you guys?
Well, I think what you're doing, Conwell. I mean, we benefit tremendously by the things that you do to inform, spread the word, and that's really one of our biggest tools in combating criminal activity and reducing crime and the fear of crime in our communities. It's not just the scams and the senior frauds, but it's just crimes in general, the crimes that impact all of our communities. The best thing that we can do is our outreach to our community, to encourage people to keep a lookout, to be aware, to educate themselves, and to call law enforcement if they see something suspicious or they're concerned. Call a friend, call a relative. But the outreach that you're doing is so important for law enforcement.
Let's say I suffer from a scam. Who do I call? Who should I call first?
So if you've been victimized, or if you feel like you been tried to be victimized, it's easy to just go ahead and call your local law enforcement. You should have that number already handy, I would hope.
So if they call 911, would that work?
That would work. That makes it easy. Even though it may not be an emergency in progress at the time, it might be over with. Call 911 if that's the number the only number you know. Call that number, and you'll get your local police department. And that's a good place to start. Eventually, a report will be taken and by the local law enforcement agency, and also the FBI can be contacted, because many if not most of these crimes are on the internet, or they're made nationally or internationally, which that falls into the FBI's jurisdiction. And they also get more of these types of crimes and can connect the dots sometimes. And the other location that is the Federal Trade Commission, keeps a lot of data and information on these types of scams and frauds. So I would suggest that our citizens be aware of all those locations, have those phone numbers handy, not just to educate yourself, but if you need to call, you have that information. So, it's important to call somebody. If you don't, in some of these scams, the scammers will try to intimidate the seniors or the victims not to call law enforcement. Either maybe they're threatening to do harm to a loved one. So if that's the case, and you're afraid to call law enforcement, call a friend, call a neighbor, call somebody, and before you do anything.
Boy, that's excellent advice. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head there, Chief Dill. In fact, my friend who was hurt really, really bad by the grandparent scam, she said, to me, I would love just to tell people my age to ask questions. When those people call, don't feel pressured into doing anything. So they'll eventually ask questions. Eventually, she said they'll probably hang up. She said just don't rush into it, and try to get the phone number from them and tell them that you'll call them back at a later time. That way, to kind of give you an opportunity to buy some time, to be able to call a family member, like you said, or maybe call the grandchild or child who is in trouble. But she said, never send cash or gift cards. That's an absolute must not to do that. Our seniors like to keep things simple a lot of times. So that 911, like you said, is a great idea. The FTC. I know we talked about COVID scams last week to report, and you mentioned that earlier in our phone call. The HHS has a number, the 1-800-447-8477. Also, on our website, there's a place to report scams, AmericanSeniorAlliance.com. There's also an elder locator out there that you can access, online to report it. But, probably to keep things simple is best. Probably to be able to start out with 911 is a great thing, and possibly ask law enforcement there if you've been scammed.
No, absolutely. And you mentioned about your friend just saying, be able to slow things down. And I think that's a great point. You're going to be, again, pushed to make quick decisions, and this, like you said, the sense of urgency, and it is so important to slow that down. Ask questions is a great point. Ask questions to verify things, and in the case of the grandparent scam, if the caller or the grandchild says they were arrested and they need help, they need bail money, it is so easy to just take a moment and say, let me call you right back, and get the number they're at, and I'll call you right back, and then call the law enforcement agency or ask them what agency they were arrested or where they're at, and just call that agency and verify it. It's just so easy to do that. And it's not going to change the outcome. If it's legitimately in trouble, they're still going to be there. If they're not, you just saved yourself a lot of money.
Absolutely. Are there other scams that you want to... you mentioned that great email scam that, some people were heads up, and obviously that the bank didn't pay out. There are other scams that you wanted to share with us today?
Well, I don't have any particular incidences I can talk about, but there are so many scams, and you've mentioned a couple of them earlier on. You've already done some podcasts and some on some of them. The ones that you spoke about earlier in the beginning. I think you talked about the COVID-19 and maybe the Medicare, if I remember correctly.
Right.
But there's plenty of them out there. There's counterfeit prescription drug scams. There are Medicare scams. There's funerals, cemetery scams where people will attend a funeral and try to connect with the loved ones there. Maybe they claim the deceased owed them money or something. There's all kinds of telemarketing and phone scams that we talked about. Investment scheme scams. I believe that's one of the ones you mentioned that you did. There's homeowner reverse mortgage scams. So there's just plenty of them, the tech support scams, where they will could try to convince you that your computer has a virus and try to access your computer. And so, the message is, and you mentioned this already, never, ever give, wire, or send money to a stranger or somebody that you haven't verified, a relative you haven't verified. Never do that.
That's a great intel, Chief Dill. And I think we can pretty much summarize things for our people to really be cautious of, especially unsolicited information, and always shred receipts, debit, credit card info, just protect your information. That's a lot of times what these fraud artists are after. They're trying to get that Social Security number. They're trying to get your address. They're trying to get phone numbers, and they can do a lot of things with certain kinds of numbers. They're that talented. And never give out that Social Security or Medicare or any personal information.
Right.
Well, Chief Dill, we appreciate you taking time to share with our audience today on, how to protect themselves and how to fight back. It's been an absolute privilege visiting with you today, and we are so grateful for your service. We're grateful for your 39 years of law enforcement. Our seniors absolutely love, police officers for all the work that they do to help protect them. And we want to make sure that you understand, we want to help you get the word out. So don't hesitate to reach out to us anytime to help, share the stories so we can share it with our audience.
Well, Conwell, thank you so much. And you're absolutely right. Our seniors, and in our city here in Winter Park, and I'm sure it's like this across the world, and I know it was like that in my previous departments, our seniors are our biggest supporters, law enforcement's biggest supporters, and we love them. And so I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for letting me be a part of this podcast, and I look forward to working with you anytime.
Outstanding, Chief Dill. We look forward to seeing you again soon. And ladies and gentlemen, today we look forward to our next podcast together. In the meantime, check out our website, as we talked about earlier, AmericanSeniorAlliance.com. And if you need to report a scam, 911 is always a great place to start, and you can report one, on our website if necessary. So long, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you have a safe week.